Welcome back to the project that takes up too much of my time. If you're new, then I really suggest you watch my last video, but if you're too lazy, then I'll just give you the quick rundown. Here's the creature. It can be big, small, fast, slow, see far or near. And it has one goal: survive. But how do you do that? Well, it has a neural network for a brain that mutates so that it can learn. And it can learn stuff like eating food and laying eggs that will then hatch into the next generation to relive the cycle again. Currently, the only way for creatures to get energy is plants, but what I want to add is them getting energy from other creatures, which should hopefully lead to predation, as right now they can evolve, but after a while they stop getting any better at eating plants and stop evolving, which isn't that good for an evolution simulator. I'll make it so that when a creature bites another creature, they'll get a little bit of energy, which should hopefully lead to predation, as some will evolve into specializing into chasing and eating the creatures and not the plant pellets. Okay, let's see this in action. The creature has completely given up on movement and just sits still, laying eggs and eat their own children for infinite energy. What's that lag? Oh no, that's not good. Like a disease just growing outwards and destroying my frames. Okay, I need to fix this. The whole disease thing was done because of two things. They ate their own children and through that discovered an infinite source of energy, which was only made worse by them being able to go through each other, because that meant that they could just stack on top of each other so they don't need to waste energy doing useless things like moving to food, as you could just lay an egg and eat your own child instead. I'm just going to focus on the latter, as that's something I've been meaning to fix for a while. Currently in the simulation, the creatures and pellets are just points in space that have a certain radius they can eat other points in, and technically aren't physical objects that take up the space they're in. So that means the simulation now needs a proper physics engine. And I do have some physics already, and it works pretty well most of the time. But I need to flesh out more and add collisions to it, as I've wanted to for a while. It doesn't need to be anything too complicated, as everything's roughly a ball shape, so I'll only need to simulate circle collisions, which are fairly simple to do. And here it is. It works, and you can even see that they all pack together, which is pretty cool and a good sign that actually works. The crazy thing is that the collision physics are much simpler than you think, as all it does is move the objects. Are they colliding? If yes, move them apart until they don't touch, and apply an opposite but equal force on both of them, and repeat. But I did have to make a small tweak so that it can be made multi-threaded and run faster, but it also made the physics less accurate, as now with that same example, they don't pack together as nice and jerk about. But that is only because there are lots of objects colliding at once, which won't really happen in the simulator, so I just made another example where there was no gravity to pull them in, and the physics is done similar enough, so I'm not going to complain about the compromise. Then I made another two examples where I can control one of the balls, but they'll have like a different mass and size, and you can see that the small ball that has a lower mass has trouble pushing stuff around, and mostly just gets deflected off the others, but the larger and heavy one could just bulldoze right through them. Now it's only this simple because it's just balls and nothing else, like boxes, which I'll probably want to add later, but that's a problem for future me to handle. And it works, no big complaints really, but how's the performance with more creatures and pellets? Not good, but manageable. Okay, that's pushing it. Oh, that just sucks. What if I turn on some of the compiler flags to just optimize it a little bit? Yeah, it should have a bit of performance. Okay, shouldn't take that long. And it's ready. Oh nice, a 3x speed up, and now it's pushing 60 instead of lagging before. How does it run with max creatures though? It was like 2 FPS before, but 6 will still be an improvement. What? it's still 60. That's a 30x speed up. What the hell did the compiler do? You know, if it works, it works, and we'll ask what witchcraft was used in this. So that's the physics taken care of. What was I supposed to be doing? Oh yeah, this video's about predation. So in order to have a proper ecosystem, you need to first of all have a source of energy like plant, which I already have with those green pellets. Something needs to eat those plants, which I already have, but then you need to have something that eats the thing that eats the plants, which I don't have yet. Now, you also need other things for a good ecosystem, like something that eats the thing that eats the thing that eats the plants, something that eats both plants and things, and maybe also plants that eat things, but that can all be done later, and I need to first lock down things eating plants. Right now, the creatures can get energy from each other, but I am also going to add meat that drops when a creature dies, so that even if a creature doesn't die from another creature, they can still get energy out of it, and they will want to, as a meat pellet has way more energy than a plant pellet. This should hopefully lead to potentially 3 types of meat eaters: regular predators that hunt and eat creatures, scavengers that eat any leftover and forgotten meat pellets, and leeches that don't really kill their prey but live off the small amount of energy that they get from just biting them. Okay, let's see this in action. I'm going to first let a stable population of prey grow up, then afterwards I'll just spawn in some predators and see how they act. Okay, nice, the predators are hunting. But let's fast forward a bit, see what happens. And they died. Great. I'm guessing this has happened because even though meat has more energy, plants are still just too good, and herbivores evolved to be faster, to the point that the predators couldn't keep up. When something gets eaten, it goes straight to the creature's energy, which isn't good, as what the creatures end up doing is eating food quicker so that they can move quicker to eat food even quicker. And if I turn the energy down any lower, they will die, which is obviously worse. So I'm going to rework this by instead having it so food has to be digested first. Creatures now, after eating food, constantly gain energy until it's fully digested, and eating more won't make you gain energy faster, as now that depends on how energy dense it is. Eating more will only mean you'll gain energy for longer. This will also mean that it's possible for a creature to starve to death on a full stomach, as it might be using more energy per second than it's gaining per second through digestion, which will eventually lead to its death no matter how much food it eats. Plants will obviously have a lower energy density than meat, so that only creatures on a diet of meat will be able to be fast and quick, as they can afford the energy cost. Okay, let's try this again. And they have now become too good, as now they've evolved past their point to need prey to eat, and just eat each other and their own children for infinite energy. Again. All this needs is just some adjustments on how much laying an egg costs, so they can't just lay an egg, eat the child, and end up with more energy than they began with. Actually, I should probably first check to see how the simulation runs without any disturbances, just to see if there's anything else I need to fix. And the population rises up. And it drops down. That should be happening way later. Okay, it's lower than when it even started now. And they all died. Okay, that might have just been bad luck. Let me try that again. And they all die again. Great. It looks like this is happening not because there isn't enough food, but because when a creature sees a food pellet, it can end up in this weird death spiral as it keeps trying to get to it, but it can't turn fast enough, which leads to it eventually dying of starvation while being just that close to a pellet. If a creature's far enough away, then great, it can turn and face it in time. But if it's within a certain radius outside the pellet, and it's not facing directly at it, the creature will be stuck in that death spiral I just talked about earlier, and it will almost always die. And this happens so often that every creature dies because of this. I'm guessing this is happening now because before what would happen is that if a creature was stuck, chances are another would come and free it. But that was before I rebalanced everything. Since I changed how much eggs cost and a lot of other things to prevent that infinite energy problem from happening again, there are now way less creatures, and that also means there's a lower chance of creatures meeting each other and freeing each other. My fix will be making it so that the pellets slowly drift around, so that if a creature is stuck in the death spiral, the pellet will eventually leave the radius, and the creature will finally be able to eat it. I could make them turn faster, but that would make it worse for the creatures, as if they can only turn one way, which happens when they have just begun to learn that turning to food is in fact a good idea, chances are they will overshoot the pellet and completely miss it. And at least with the old speed, they had a chance of getting the pellet, and with that happening, they will never learn that turning to food is a good idea, and they will keep dying. And also, making them turn faster will only make the radius of death smaller and not fully disappear. First I did it so that when a pellet spawns, it first chooses a random point somewhere to go towards, but that just ended up in all of them clumping around the center, so instead I made it so that they chose a random point close to them, but that still didn't really look that right. Then I settled on making it so that the pellets instead exert an outward force on all the pellets nearby to push them apart, but at first it still looked off as they just ended up arranging themselves in this evenly distributed lattice, but with a bit of tweaking it ended up working just like how I wanted it to. When I was making it, I sort of wanted to simulate how air pressure works, and that led to all the pellets moving together in this sort of wave, randomly around, which looked pretty nice, and most importantly solves my problem. Okay, now to finally let this run. First thing I'll do is let a population of herbivores grow up in peace and safety, and then later on I'll spawn in some predators. I'm going to adjust the food energy density to be a bit lower because by default it's the same as meat, which, well, I don't think I really need to explain why I'm changing it. I already went through that wrong. And now to spawn in the predators. Okay, fast forward. It's stable. They aren't instantly dying. Finally. Well, that's predation partially completed. I've still got a long way to go, as I now need to figure out how to make them naturally evolve into predators, and sometimes they do still all die, but this will need lots of small tweaks and balancing, which will be a pain, but worthwhile, as I really want predation to work. On another note, this project really needs a better name, as right now I'm just calling it the Evolution Simulator, which is really verbose and needs a better alternative. So if you have any suggestions, comment them below, and who knows, I might use it. I think the next thing to do now is work a bit more on predation, tweak some things, but also work on their brains, because my plan is to try out a reinforcement learning algorithm instead, as I've heard some pretty good things about it, so I'll try and see if that leads to more intelligent creatures and behaviors like predation. And that's the end of the video. Like, subscribe, comment something, I'm open to new ideas, and see you in the next video.